I can't believe we actually did it! This is so exciting! I can't wait to see what's in there!
I went into Dragon Quest VII Reimagined with a less than stellar impression of the game it's based on. Or rather, the game it's based on's game it was based on. The 3DS iteration was a snappier introduction to the world of Dragon Quest VII than the PS1 original. But for me, the time it took to get to my first battle was still too long. By the time I'd fought my first slimes, I had completely run out of gas. But I'm happy to report I didn't feel this way about Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. The game finds a nice blend of the mystery and intrigue of the PS1 original with the more rapid pace of the 3DS remake. But that only accounts for the opening hours, and after having played, I'm not so sure it rings true for the whole experience. Dragon Quest VII is about the spirit of adventure. The hero and his friends Prince Kiefer and Maribel are frustrated at their ho-hum lives in Pilchard Bay and want to explore the wider world. The problem is that, as far as anyone knows, there is no more world. Esterd Island is the only island on the whole planet. Prince Kiefer suspects there's more to the vast open ocean than meets the eye, and conspires with the hero to discover its secrets. Together with the hero's childhood friend Maribel, they find their way inside the old ruins of the island, with old stone tablets in hand, and find themselves transported to another world full of monsters and new characters. This is the inciting incident. From here on out, the party will discover new lands by helping the residents of each new world and locating the stone tablets that will take them there. It's an interesting premise, and it had me ready to uncover the mystery of their world. And the world is breathtaking. Our main cast were created via scans of handcrafted dolls, and they look outstanding in-game. There are sections that look like they could have been pre-rendered marketing material, but in reality, that's just how it looks. Dragon Quest VII's landscapes, while quite samey throughout the adventure, are so pleasing to the eye that it's hard to care. The insides of buildings have lots of little knickknacks throughout that make the world feel like a handcrafted diorama. And that's helped by the legendary Akira Toriyama monster designs. The 3D models of his original artwork look better than they ever have before. They maintain their classic posing while making them look good in 3D. The same can be said of Dragon Quest XI, but this is the pinnacle of Dragon Quest's 3D monster designs. The battle animations are similarly excellent. Your party and monsters have a variety of animations for their attacks. And in the case of your party members, they'll even occasionally shout out the name of their move like a shonen protagonist. Battles are so snappy that I played almost the entire game at the slowest battle speed, and I got to fully appreciate all the love and care that went into the presentation. Pair that with its excellent orchestral score, and you have one of the best presentations in video games. I wish I could say the same for the rest of the experience. Dragon Quest VII follows the classic formula of Dragon Quest to a T. You go to a new town, that town is facing some kind of crisis, you help save them, you have a party celebrating your heroism, and then you move on. I love these vignettes, that's Dragon Quest. But more often than not, I found myself not that invested in these stories. Some are more interesting than others, sure, but it's never a good sign when a voiced character is talking and I've completely zoned out. This started happening to me a lot towards the latter half of the game. For most of these smaller stories, you'll arrive in a town and a voiced character will start explaining what's gone wrong. But the problem is that they can talk for 3 or 4 minutes at a time without your characters reacting, responding, or having any stake in the events at all. When my characters don't care, I don't care. This is typical of classic Dragon Quest, but when the game is dressed up so nicely, it feels antiquated. Maybe it wouldn't have been an issue for me if the runtime were shorter. Reimagined is a slimmed-down version of Dragon Quest VII, yes, but it doesn't go far enough. I was just shy of 70 hours when I rolled credits, but I had checked out a good 20 hours earlier. The sad part is that the overarching plot really got going in that second half. I started to feel invested at that point, but it should have come so much sooner. Some islands you visit could have been relegated to the set of side story islands the game offers, and the sense of adventure wouldn't have felt much different. Still, that sense of adventure and exploring the unknown is the heart and soul of Dragon Quest VII. Each town having wildly different problems and characters was exciting. The first island story you encounter is surprisingly touching. I won't spoil it here, but it's one of the most memorable in the game, and many of the stories that follow never quite reach that level. You return to each island you visit after some time has passed and get to see what's happened to the towns and people after you've helped them. One story had a robot left over from the distant past that was stuck trying to heal her creator by making him soup well after he had passed away. There were even a couple instances where I'd return and towns were outright gone. These moments were surprisingly effective, and it would draw me back in when my attention started to lapse. And while I did find my mind drifting at times, the characters and humor of Dragon Quest are as sharp as ever. Dumb puns and ridiculous monster names can be found all over. The charm of Dragon Quest is fully intact, and this is ultimately the most important part. I fought a zombie named Putrick Stinkenheimer. Come on, how can you not love that? Not again. Dragon Quest VII Reimagined was made for the dad joke in all of us. When I'm playing it, I'm playing a Dragon Quest game. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. While your core party isn't always super involved in what's going on, I became attached to them by the end of the adventure anyway. The standouts are Maribel and Kiefer, which makes sense considering they're your first party members. I hated Maribel at the beginning. Her constant insulting and poor attitude just did not jive with me. But after spending more time with her and learning more about her relationship with the hero, she ended up tied with Kiefer for my favorite party member. And, Kiefer. He and the hero have a bromance similar to the one between the Luminary and Eric in Dragon Quest XI. He's your ride or die. He'd do anything for you, and you'd do anything for him. He's also the driving force of the narrative. He wants the adventure. Without Kiefer, the mysteries of the world may have never been solved. I grew to really enjoy the other party members as well, especially Sir Mervyn. He's a classic knight with a great sense of justice and righteousness, and he doesn't quite fit in with your party. But that juxtaposition just works. Each of your party members will come with a vocation or class that's unique to them. Vocations determine your stats as well as what abilities and spells are available to you. The hero, for instance, is a fisherman class and has a lot of water-related abilities. After a certain point in the game, that comes way too far into the adventure, you get the ability to change vocations and even moonlight as a second one. You have so much control over your party and what they're capable of, and I don't always love that in video games, but before long, I found myself planning out my vocations for my characters and getting really invested in their growth. There are even advanced vocations that require you to have learned 2 or more vocations to grant access to them. These are the most powerful ones in the game and hold many of the spells and abilities that Dragon Quest fans have come to know and love. Abilities and spells have also been condensed into one menu, and all I can say to that is thank God. It's so much easier to explore your options when all of them are in one menu. All that said, I think this vocation system may have had an unintended side effect. Quite possibly my biggest criticism of Dragon Quest VII Reimagined is the difficulty. For a large part of my adventure, I found combat to be brain dead. Coming off of Dragon Quest 1 through 3 HD 2D, where I really had to take it slow and plan out my moves, I expected the same of Dragon Quest VII, but no. I could breeze through most fights by brute forcing my way through them. I hardly ever needed to augment my stats by casting Kabuff or Magic Barrier, and that management is my favorite part of Dragon Quest combat. Even in some of the post-game challenges, it just didn't ultimately matter that much. I've been trying to nail down the reasons for this, and a few come to mind. First of all, your characters are revived to 1 HP after a battle if they fell in combat. This takes away so much of the early game stress in Dragon Quest, you know? The struggle of building your characters up to learn healing spells, and most importantly, revival spells. They used to be a huge time and money saver because you didn't have to go back to a church to bring your party member back. But now, revival spells like Zen and Kazing only matter in actual combat, and this decision may have been a result of the vocation system. Very few of the vocations have revival spells, and perhaps the developers didn't want players to feel like they had to change vocations constantly just to have one available. You can change vocations at any time, mind you, but this is the clearest reason I could come up with. You could change vocations in the original game too, but maybe they didn't want the game to feel quite as old-school difficult as those classic JRPGs were. I don't agree with it, but that's how it is. Second, there are goddess statues that fully heal your HP and MP everywhere. You'll find them at the beginning of dungeons, sometimes in the middle, and always right before a boss. The stress of surviving a dungeon to the end is just gone. This wouldn't matter so much if the bosses felt even a little bit threatening, but they don't. As I mentioned before, I hardly ever needed to manage my buffs or debuffs to get through these fights. I could just wail on the boss until they died and be on my merry way. And I doubt the difficulty would feel much different without the statues because the game just showers you with items. For most of my adventure, I had max healing herbs for HP and single files for MP, pots and barrels respawn every time you re-enter an area, and always have a chance to drop items for you. It's too generous. I don't know what to do with all these items. I hardly ever need them to begin with. In combat, you can see if a monster is weak or resistant to an ability before you use it on them. I like this as a feature, but I wish they didn't show up until you've beaten a monster for the first time. When it came to bosses, I already knew what was most effective against them, so a lot of the stress I should be feeling when encountering them is gone. Monsters also spawn on the field, and I prefer this to random encounters. It let me set the pace of my adventure. What's even cooler is that you can insta-kill enemies in the field if you're overpowered. You just get less experience and money, and only a single point towards your vocations. This is great for keeping up the pace, but even the limited extra experience went a bit too far. I was able to run around the desert island and kill every monster that spawned without fighting them. There were so many and they spawned so frequently that I spent a bit of time there and leveled up once or twice, but more importantly, gained a ton of proficiency in my vocations. It was really nice to be able to build up my vocations quick, but the little voice inside my head told me what I was doing was cheap. Maybe it was, or maybe it wasn't, but the game gave me the choice and I went with it. The most frustrating part of this is that the game has granular difficulty settings. You can change how much damage you take, how much experience you gain, whether field enemies will attack you, or even an option to fully heal your party after every battle. Options like these are great and I'm happy they're here, but there just aren't enough of them. I wanted options to turn off objective markers, turn on post-battle death, remove the goddess statues, and maybe even a few more things, like getting rid of the map entirely so that I have to actually search my way through dungeons. I stuck to the standard settings for everything, so experienced Dragon Quest players may consider upping the damage and lowering the experience gains. You can adjust these settings on the fly, and that might help with the difficulty, but the standard experience just didn't do enough. There is post-game content though, and this is where the game really ramps up the difficulty. The kind of content you'll find here is typical of Dragon Quest, and it definitely bit back in a way that I wish more of the game had. It's still far from the hardest Dragon Quest content I've ever played, but I didn't get to fight the upcoming DLC bosses. Maybe those will get me closer to what I'm looking for. If you want more of a challenge, keep playing past the credits. Not all of the quality of life changes are bad. You have a medal album for collecting mini medals, as you usually do in Dragon Quest, but this time it comes with a list of how many there are and their general location. Whenever you've gotten the ability to find another mini medal, such as if you needed a specific key to a chest, it'll populate on the list and tell you what region it's in. I managed to find quite a bit of the mini medals on my own just by exploring, so it was nice to be able to just see a region where I missed one and go back and find it. Some mini medals were pretty well hidden despite knowing the general area I needed to search in, but there's no more finding mini medals at random unmarked spots on the ground, and I appreciate that a lot. If you're more of a purist, you can simply ignore this aspect altogether. The stone tablets also operate this way, and you can use the list to determine where to search. The only problem is that they get put on your mini-map, so if you are interested in the scavenger hunt, you may not get what you're looking for here. I didn't mind this as much since the game was already quite long, so being able to move on to my next island quickly was welcome. If I had to rank Dragon Quest VII Reimagined among the Dragon Quest games I've beaten, being 1 through 3 HD2D, 4 DS, 10 online, and 11S, it would probably either tie with 4 or be just below it. It's not an entry I'm especially eager to return to in the future, although I'm glad to have played it and I enjoyed much of my time with it. It's just bogged down by some mind-boggling difficulty decisions and too much meandering. But despite that, I still wanted to see the game through, including all of its post-game content and mini-medals. By the time I was completely finished with Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, I had spent a whopping 83 hours playing. As I mentioned before, the core adventure took me approximately 60 hours. That's quite a bit shorter than both the PS1 and 3DS versions, but I still think it's too long. It's such a shame because so much love and care was put into the presentation, and I'm not sure many players will get to see it all. It runs great on PS5 and Nintendo Switch 2, and I'd say to play on either platform you prefer because you won't see a hit to performance. Dragon Quest diehards will find a lot to love about 7 Reimagined, and I'm interested in seeing what returning and new players think alike. It's not my favorite Dragon Quest, but it is Dragon Quest. GVG gives Dragon Quest VII Reimagined a 7.5 out of 10. Thank you so much for listening to me blab about a game and a series that I've really come to love. Stay tuned to GVG for more news, reviews, and everything in between. Until then, keep the games good and the vibes greater. Bye now.